Good evening, everybody, and welcome to ProductTank London. If you have joined us before, welcome back. And if you haven't, we hope you enjoy your first session. So before we get started, I would just like to give you a couple of words and explain a little bit about who we are and where we come from. So ProductTank was started more than 10 years ago by a few people in a pub in London who felt the need to share their learnings about product and learn from each other. And we have gone a very long way from then. Currently, we're the world's largest product community. We have product tanks in more than 200 cities around the world, which provides a space for product people to come together, to discuss, to learn, and talk all things product. There are multiple ways how you can get involved in the community. So the first one is you could speak at a product tank. We're always looking for speakers, so feel free to get in touch with your local product tank organizer. You can also host or sponsor a product tank. We tend to run events virtually, also hybrid and in person. You can also write for Mind the Product if you have a good point of view or anything useful that you would like to share. Or you can also become Mind the Product member for even more content and join a global network of other product people. So today's theme is decentralized finance. And so before we go ahead and get started, so what exactly is decentralized finance? It is basically a financial ecosystem that is based on blockchain. And through decentralized finance, users can buy and sell assets and financial services without middlemen. So there's no such thing as banks in the middle, for example. So decentralized finance has blown up over the past few years, and there is really no how-to guide for product people on how to humanize the experience because it's quite complicated. What are the key principles to follow when you are building decentralized finance products? And what even to watch out in a space which is not just black and white. There are many, many scams present. So tonight we have a very international lineup, actually. We have our speakers joining from Seattle, from San Francisco, from Paris, and we hope to shed some light on with some of these topics. So first off, I will introduce you to Nayat. Just a second. Oh, sorry, quick technical difficulties.
Hello? Hello?
Good. Yeah, so since 2018, Nayat has been focusing on humanizing the crypto space through product design in decentralized finance. And she's worked with leading platforms like InstaApp, Union Finance, and Vesper Finance.
Yep.
And today, Nayat will talk about what it really means to design for decentralized products and how can user experience patterns solve common problems in the Web3 space to make decentralized finance more human and accessible to everyone. So I will just pass it on to Nayat.
Thank you so much, Elina. That was a really good introduction. Hello, everyone. So I am Nayat. This is my first time speaking in public, so I really hope it doesn't hurt. So as Elina said, I've been working in this space since 2018. And when I was putting together this presentation, I was first focused on kind of pointing out the main problems and UX points that users might find while using DeFi platforms. But then I realized that the main problem that most people have, the first one at least, is that they don't really understand what Web3 is. So I'm going to start with a very quick and unsolicited history class. So in order to understand what Web3 is, we need to go further into the first two previous stages of the internet. So each stage of the internet, each evolution of the internet basically shaped the way that people interacted with the web, and therefore also the way that these products were designed. So the first stage of the internet, Web 1, was basically a very static experience for users. In this era, users were basically passive consumers of static content. So, it was not that exciting, let's say, like the technology was quite new. And then Web 2 arrives, which is the internet as we know it today, and users go from passive consumers to active consumers. In this internet era, users can not just consume content, but also create and share content. And the main protagonists of this internet era are the big tech platforms, Instagram, Facebook, etc., etc. So let's say that, for example, I want to share a post or a story in Instagram. That post and that story, I don't really own it. Instagram owns it. And they can delete my account or delete my content at any given time. But if Instagram existed in Web3, meaning if Instagram was built on top of Web3, in top of blockchain technology, no one will ever be able to delete my account or delete my content, because that content will live in a distributed way in the blockchain. So in this sense, what Web3 does basically is remove the middleman in every type of product, whether it's a social media, or it's a logistic product, whether it's a banking product. So this is what we call decentralization, removing the middleman. Cool. So now that we understood a little bit what Web3 is, I'm going to deep dive into what DeFi is, which is one of the applications that Web3 enables. So DeFi goes for decentralized finance. And decentralized finance basically means it allows people to have access to financial services, normal like normal banking, like lending, like borrowing, insurance, trading, but without relying in a financial institution, in a company, let's say a bank, for example. So this is extremely beneficial, especially for the 1.7 billion people in the world that don't have access to a bank account. So in this sense, designing for decentralized finance means designing for a future where anyone can have access to financial services, no matter where they're from or who their prime minister is, right? So all this sounds super beautiful, almost very utopian, but the reality is that these products are very hard to use unless you're a crypto bro. So we can admit that the biggest problem of DeFi products is good design, is UX. Some difficulties. Say that you want to deposit, like open a savings account in your bank. They
Hi, looks like one of our speakers is having technical difficulties. She is frozen. So I think it's best that we. Oh, Hayat, you're back. Hello. It's just like a live demo, isn't it? Whenever you need to demo something, that's when things go wrong. I promise you, we have tried this before and it all worked. So I think until while Nayat is trying to sort out her connection, we will move on to the next speaker, which is Mark. Yep. So just to quickly say a couple of words about Mark. So Mark has been a product director and community lead for 14 years. And he has been an early startup employee multiple times and launched products for more than 6 million customers with 90 million annual revenue. And he also has built communities with more than 100,000 members who were absolutely vital to the success of the product launches. He also helped to scale organizations to more than 300 employees and eventually led a team of product, design, and community managers. These days, Mark leads teams in DAOs and Web3 gaming. He's basically doing all things metaverse, virtual economies, quest designs, identity, and reputation with groups like Odyssey DAO, DAO Masters, and Yield Guild Games. So I'll pass on to Mark, who will basically, I guess you guessed it, talk you through on how to design and build good communities.
All right, thanks for having me. Is my audio okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly well.
All right, so the topic of this session is DeFi for product people. I'm going to focus on the people part, which is also very important for people who are interested in switching over or learning more about Web3. So I'll divide it into three parts, my journey to give you a better understanding of my transition, and then the Web3 principles that I think are important, and then learnings in building a successful Web3 community. So let's start with the journey. So like many others, I've tried and put in some money in crypto, but I never really found a way to contribute meaningfully up until last year when the market moved the needle a little bit to work on consumer products, right? So we've heard a lot about NFTs, a lot of communities being formed, and finally a lot of more client-side facing applications were formed. So I love building consumer products, so it was very natural for me to transition over. And then I also got a lot of learnings in doing so. So for example, when I was doing e-commerce, I was part of the gaming ecosystem. And gaming has a very tight-knit culture. So people are very strongly connected by passion. And it doesn't matter where you are around the world, and it doesn't matter where you went to school, what company you work for, or even countries that you're located at. So people care about playing games, and that's what bond people together. So this is actually a prelude to how we think about crypto in general, where people have the same mission and passion, and then people are working towards it. So that's my experience. Last year, fleshing it out further, when the whole market exploded, I was trying to find a way to participate. So if you're new to the space, you'll probably see distinction across like DeFi exchanges or DeFi products, NFT projects, and then DAOs. So that's the first step of like breaking it down that is easily understood by folks. Of course, there are overlap, and that's what we're gonna talk about further. But I first my phase one is actually participating in DAOs. So DAO Masters is a group that enable people to learn and understand how to operate a DAO, so decentralized autonomous org, enabling communities to govern and so forth, which we'll talk about later. And then afterwards, I switched to Odyssey and spent more time there. So the mission of Odyssey, which is another Web3 community, is to onboard people into Web3. And then after some time, I realized that I'm spending a lot of time doing this all day long voluntarily, so might as well do something in a more professional capacity. So I did a part-time work with Superlayer, a Web3 studio, which is a group spinning out products on the crypto token community side. And then finally, I got really deep into Web3 gaming. So now I'm working with Yield Games to think about what can a virtual economy look like? How can token design, quests, and achievements be put together to define what the future is? So all of these is a foundation to what I'm going to talk about next, because I really think that these experiences last year allowed me to think about communities in Web3 in a more fundamental way. So I'm gonna switch over to what I think are some of the principles that are important in keeping in mind. So the first one is Web3 is all about shared ownership. So I think we heard about that earlier, that like Web3 is more open, you own data, and that is also true when you think about communities. So first, you have to create like a sense of belonging, because Web3 is all about that shared ownership. So it's essential to show the new members that they belong and how they can contribute back to what you're doing. So not Web3 specific, but it's highlighted more so in a community that is more open, where everyone is working together, not just a member or a participant, but an active contributor. And then creating a sense of belonging also requires creating an inclusive community. So one that has like pathways for people to participate in a safe environment. So of course, there's a lot of because of the open nature, you will always have a balance of the good guys and bad guys. But depending on the culture that you create, it can certainly be a space where people can learn together, similar to some of the groups that I learned from. And then it's also a space where one can experiment and discover new possibilities of Web3. So this is by what I would say is that the market is still very much experimental in many ways. So you'll see a lot of people trying new things together and building new tools and processes. So it's a very fun space to be in, and that is all possible because of that mindset of shared ownership. All right, next is like principle number 2, accessibility is key for building a successful tokenized community. So I think one word here that is probably new to folks who aren't in crypto yet is like tokenized. So like in crypto, there's this ability to issue and actually build a token supply, and that token in many cases have utility. That utility can be a contribution to decision-making process, or if it's liquid in the market, you can actually exchange that for some other tokens or liquidate that in cash. So it's a very interesting thing because that one asset can be used in many ways, which is not something that you'll see in historically in other kinds of assets. So yeah, I'd say accessibility, combine that with accessibility is very important, because members in Web3 communities contribute not necessarily because they have to, unless they're doing it for their job, but because they want to. So this means that if you want to create a community with high engagement, then you need to develop a simple, transparent, and accessible process for participation. So proactively ensuring that members know how to engage is important in operating in a Web3 environment. All right, so what does that mean? So maybe let's take one specific example in the screen. So this is a tool that one of the well-known tools that people use in order to make decisions. So in a more mature DeFi or Web3 environment, you'll see this used heavily, and then some groups use it lightly. So for example, in one of the groups that I'm part of, you'll see on their screen on the left side are proposals on how to go about things. So there's a proposal to partner with an online platform, a proposal to agree on the compensation that will be given to volunteers, and then finally, towards the end, there's a proposal to restructure the community as a whole. So like the interesting thing about this is that if you look at the right-hand side, you'll see like a yes or no at the lower right? You'll see that people are voting here, but they're not just voting through likes or like emojis. They are voting using their tokens that they have. And then you'll see, and that is actually recorded on chain. So you'll see who voted. It's not on the screen right now, but you'll see just transparency of which wallets or people are voting for and against the proposal, and then use that as a record for how to govern and think about the future of the community. All right, I'm gonna leave it at that for now, and then finally, principle number 3 is that you have to unlock members' potential. So the ethos is transparency, and the interesting about this one is the openness create and introduce new nuances, right, or challenges. For example, a lot of people last year really wanted to help And then like communities are mostly hosted on Discord, and people are having a hard time thinking about it and taking action. So I think if you are actively contributing, like spotting those members who have the skills and elevating them is important. And then doing the reverse too. Like if you're in a new community, finding the people to talk to and declaring what you're good at, declaring your intent is going to help everyone mobilize the community better. Cool. So there are, and finally, I dumped this in one slide because it's not like Web3 specific, but I do think that they're very important as well. So like act of service, supporting each other, having that concept of cycles and rituals, and then finally having that vision. So all of these again are timeless principles that you have to keep in mind as you venture out and join some of these Web3 groups. All right, last part. So let's talk about some other learnings that I had in terms of building the community. So I'd say that first is the community have a strong sense of like collective mission to disrupt the status quo. So even if the path is not clear. So I think that's one of the things that is interesting. If you work in a startup or a chaotic, ambiguous environment, I think you'll find this a very exciting space. Capital is available when you have the right team or mission. So this is a screenshot of a crowdfund led by Peter, who founded Odyssey. We raised 100,000 back then, so this is converted to US dollars now, but and it's less than half. But when we opened the crowdfund, everyone was trying to learn and for education. So we opened the crowd. I remember distinctly that we haven't even published the launch, but we almost reached like 50% for whatever reason. Someone, like a group of people, found the crowdfunding link, and then by the time that we launched in the morning, we hit the goal, and we funded our treasury. So education and or onboarding products and services is still a gap. So this is a space that was very well supported by people who are not just part of our group but outside as well. And then so that's one. I think going back to what I said, there's a very strong sense of let's do it together, and we let's build something new. The second one is I'd say like what makes it. There's a lot of elements that are different. So the shared treasury, decision making power, and consensus mechanism. So I see it more like if you think about the principles of blockchain and you read all about these theories about how things are recorded in public and how they're immutable. Like there are there's a set of processes and components that mimics that, but with how people operate. So I'd say that it's very exciting because in a Web3 community that is really that really embodies the principle. There's no one person who makes a decision. You collectively can propose and work together in either launching projects or improving the processes internally. And maybe just fleshing it out, I did mention tools and components. What are those exactly? We talked about voting, we talked about tokens, and then there's this concept of wallet. So the wallet is something that supports the fund or the treasury. So at the beginning, you might be setting up a wallet and signing up people who would be signatories. And then there's a mechanism to allow multiple people to sign that before you issue the funds. And then these are some of the things that are I think are new in terms of how you operate in a community that is publicly owned. All right. So communities, there's a lot. This is outdated slide last year. There's the last check that I did in deepdao.io. There's 4,000 plus DAOs cutting across all of these buckets. Some are social, some are protocol heavy, and it's just a matter of finding the right home for you. So I'd say like my biggest learning is that it's a new way to build and collectively take action, govern, and create a new web. So like I'd say again, if you're looking for paradigm shifts and changing the way you think in many ways, I think this is one path to consider. Challenges. So final set. First one is applying the governance principles and actually using the tools. So I don't think we have enough time to look at these demos, but like some of the tools that you have to use will actually guide you through the process. But I think setting it up and applying it are two distinct things. So you like embodying what it means to be Web3 community is sometimes hard to execute. So that's one. The one on the left shows you how to set up structure, and then the right is like one tool where you can create the wallet. So NosiSafe is one of the popular ones. Challenge two, communications and commitment. So it's really challenging to make sure project priorities and updates are reaching as many people as possible. So imagine, right, if you work in a startup, you have a mandate and then you have a goal. In a Web3 community, it's even more flat. So like getting people to align on things can be very difficult at times. And then commitment is also very hard because no one is forcing people to be in a DAO or in a Web3 community. So if they don't like what you're doing, then they're going to leave. And it's a very noisy space. So people are jumping around different projects. And unless you find someone who's really committed to work for several weeks, then a project isn't as easy to execute. All right. So how do you overcome that? It's a combination of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic one is really like going back to reminding people why they're there, paying it forward, and then alignment, right? So that is this very strong anchor that you should think about when you're going into the space, and then you combine that with some Web3 fun elements. So there's this recognition bounty work that people can be rewarded to, and then badges that are also recorded on chain. So these can be NFT or non-NFT, and all of these elements in conjunction with the internal motivations, I think are good ways to overcome challenges in terms of how do you mobilize a set of people, a set of strangers all around the world to make things happen. As a final slide, I'd say timeless principle, going back to the segment, it's essential to nurture a sense of belonging, being inclusive, and being accessible. So the best communities that I'm part of have all of these components. And that ends the presentation. Type it in the chat if you have questions, and I hope you learned something out of that.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Mark. Very insightful. I think community building has been a challenge not only in Web3, but also in Web2. But we can chat about it later to see if there's anything that applies to both and how do you take the learnings across. Luckily, moving forward though, we have Nayat back, who will basically pick up where she left off to continue her presentation on how to make the crypto experience very accessible to humans. So I'll just pass it on to Nayat.
Thank you, Elina, and I'm sorry, everyone. I'm currently in a hotel, and the Wi-Fi is not reliable. So cool. I'm gonna take it from where I left it, from DeFi. So DeFi, we were saying that it goes for decentralized finance. And decentralized finance, basically, it allows people to have access to financial services like lending, borrowing, trading, also insurance, any type of financial service, but without relying on a company, on a financial entity, right? So this is very beneficial for everyone, but especially for those who don't have access to having a bank account, which are 1.7 billion people in the world. So basically, designing for decentralized finance means designing for a future where everyone can have access to financial services no matter where they're from. So all that sounds super good and very beautiful and sweet, but the reality is that these products are very, very hard to use for now. So we can admit that the biggest problem that this space has, the biggest problem that DeFi products have, is that they have very poor UX and very poor product design. And yeah, JC here can agree. So cool, what you can see here is Curve. And Curve is one of the biggest decentralized protocols. And what Curve does Yes, you can all have these crazy reactions. So what Curve does is basically allows people to deposit money, deposit their tokens, and then earn quite high interests. And this is very, very good value proposition. Like everyone wants high interest, right? But the thing is that this poor design doesn't allow everyone to use it, right? So even though this is a very extreme example on how to not capitalize on bad design, it really gives us an idea of the challenges that we have in this space and how we can improve it. So in this sense, we can say that design plays a key role on the democratization of DeFi products, on the adoption of DeFi products. So in order to reach this so desired mass adoption, we need to base our product design in 3 fundamental pillars. And these pillars are, the first one, and probably the most obvious one, is education. And even though the best products out there are the ones that need almost no explanation, the reality of DeFi is that it's filled with new concepts that users need to understand in order to interact with these products. So in order to make sure that users actually understand what they are doing when they're interacting with this type of products, first of all, we need to craft a really good onboarding. And with crafting a good onboarding, I don't mean what you're thinking. I don't mean throwing 3-4 introduction screens with very sexy illustrations and some text that no one will ever read because people don't read. I don't mean that. What I mean is to introduce the product to users through the design. Basically, let them play with the product without playing with their money. So what this means? This means basically, let them understand how it works through the design. So a really good example here is Instadap, and Instadap was one of the first DeFi products that I worked on. And something really good they do is that they have a simulation mode here. So you can just basically toggle a simulation mode, and once you toggle it, what Instadap does is basically they give you some fake money so you can interact with the product without losing your own money, right? So you can see I had like $1, and then suddenly I have like here 128, so I can play around with it. So this is super beneficial for users for many reasons. One of them is that it gives them a clear idea of what Instadap can do, right? Without them having any, basically losing any money. And secondly, it really gives them confidence. So once they go back to this platform, they know exactly what they can do. Cool. So another main blocker for normal users to start interacting with this type of platforms is the crypto jargon. So I'm pretty sure that 99% of the population will probably need to Google things like liquidity pool or mining or LP token, etc. So having this type of complex jargon, it will just make it harder for users to understand the value of the product. So unless the product is fully focused on targeting developers, this complex terminology, it will just make them feel really scared and uncomfortable using this product. So now, UX is not just about making things look and feel pretty and coherent. It's also about making complex terminology easy to understand to everyone. And to be able to make it easy to understand, we need to completely hide the technology and show the value. And this should be a mantra for this product: hide the technology and show the value. Users don't buy technology. Users buy solutions to their problems. And that's what we need to communicate always. We need to communicate solutions, not technology. Cool. A really good example here is Royal. Royal is basically an NFT platform that allows people to buy songs from their artists, and then they own a percentage of royalty of that song. So you can see here in their landing page, in their web page, there is no reference to Web3, there is no reference to blockchain, there is no reference to like any type of technology. They just tell you, invest in music and own a piece of your favorite song. Boom, that's it. So that's quite cool. Cool. The second fundamental pillar that I want to mention is transparency. So transparency, trust and transparency are intrinsic values of blockchain technology because it's decentralized. But even though it's decentralized, this type of platforms, they need to be really clear with their users about how they manage their funds, what security measures are putting in place in order to keep their users and their funds safe, etc., etc. So now, sometimes when we use the word open source or when we use the word decentralized, it might give the false sense to users that a certain protocol or a certain blockchain is unhackable. But the reality is that there is a hack literally every single week. So in Vesper, for example, we have run more than 50 independent audits on the smart contract of the platform. So we make sure that the platform is as secure as possible, and the funds of our users are also safe. And this is necessary to communicate it, and this is part of the user experience, right? Cool. Another very vital part of these products, design-wise, is when designing for transaction flows. Because when you're interacting with DeFi protocols, basically you are moving money constantly, whether it's depositing, withdrawing, claiming, etc. So this flow needs to be as stress-free as possible. So as you can see here at Vesper, we really take it seriously. So at all times, users know what in this case, for example, what they're withdrawing, where this is going without any long addresses or hashes. And then something super important here, and most products don't really take it into account, is that the users that are interacting with this type of platforms are still humans, right? And humans don't think in crypto. Humans think in their local currency. So it's always important to let them input their amount always by default in their local currency, and then always switch to crypto if they want to, input in crypto if they want to, but give them by default the option to input in dollars or euros, etc. Another thing that is very important, and also it's linked to transparency, is that in these transactions, there is normally always some type of fee involved. In this case, for example, the platform fee, Vesper fee is free, but there is always a network fee. And this network fee is like something new for users. So we always need to use tooltips to explain the user what is this network, why they need to pay it, and at the same time see clearly the equivalent of it in their local currency, right? Not just on Ethereum. Cool. Something super important here is to explain the users the magic that happens under the hood, right? So Vesper is a DeFi aggregator, and DeFi aggregator, basically, I want you to think it as the sky scanner for finding high interests in crypto. So what Vesper allows is basically people to deposit their crypto, and then what Vesper does is that they route those funds into different protocols, looking for the best or the highest yields in the market without the user doing anything, right? So this is the magic, and we always need to be really clear about it and where the funds of the user is. So for example, if a user enters a pool of DAI, which is a stable coin, crypto, we tell them what type of a strategy is and where are we routing their funds and what type of a strategy are we using. So it's always clear for the user. And the last fundamental pillar is familiarity, making the experience familiar. So even though blockchain technology is still on day one, very early, and it fundamentally breaks with a lot of concepts and mental models that we have, it's really not necessary to reinvent the wheel in order to design for decentralized finance platforms or Web3 platforms. So in this sense, in order to onboard more people, we need to go with approach, or at least will be beneficial to go with approach called progressive decentralization. And progressive decentralization is basically allowing users to have some elements of Web 2 so they can interact with some Web3 platforms, like in a more, let's say, comfortable way with them. In other words, it's like finding a middle ground between Web3 and Web 2. Cool. So a very practical example about this is what SushiSwap just did. So SushiSwap is an automated market maker, and this super fancy word, it basically means it allows people to exchange crypto, swap crypto. So just to give you a bit of an idea of how this works, in order to swap tokens, swap crypto in SushiSwap, you first need to go to a centralized exchange, whether it's Coinbase, Binance, Crypto.com, you name it, with whatever centralized exchange. Then you buy your crypto. Once you buy it, you're going to send that crypto to a decentralized wallet, let's say MetaMask. And once you have the crypto in your MetaMask wallet, you're going to connect it here there's always a big connect wallet in all DeFi products. So once you connect your wallet, then you will be able to swap tokens, to exchange tokens. So this process is super tedious. And it's really not for everyone. Like, you literally need to Google like how to start swapping tokens in SushiSwap, right? So something really good that they did is that they allow people to buy crypto directly from SushiSwap with cash. So they allow people to basically click on this buy crypto, and then they partnered with a third service party, like a centralized party that allows people to buy crypto with their credit card or a bank transfer, etc. So is this a fully decentralized experience? Absolutely no, but it's fully convenient. And we need to think a lot about convenience in order to start onboarding new people, right? Cool. And the last one, and you're gonna all laugh because this is so obvious. So if you remember something very specific about Web3 products is that the companies don't have access to any type of information to the user. So until recently, it was really hard to send notifications to users. But right now, certain platforms allow to send notifications on chain, so it is possible. And this is very crucial because people need to know when a transaction failed. People, if they are borrowing money in a decentralized application, they need to know if they're going to be liquidated, etc., etc. So this is quite basic expectation, but until recently it was not possible. And right now that it's possible, it should be a must for any DeFi protocol to have it. Cool. So just to sum up, even though this is a very new technology, even though this is a very kind of scary space for now, we product people, we designers have the power to make this space much more human, much more simple, and why not way sexier. So thank you so much. And yeah, if you have any question or comment, yeah, please leave it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nayat. I'm so glad we were able to have you back. And also, I think it's so great that you said we don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think the myth about Web3 is that it's so complicated, that it's so different. But in fact, if you design in Web2, you can also design in Web3.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. And now I'm going to introduce to you David, which is our final speaker of tonight. David basically started his journey in product at Twitter. He also has worked on building and scaling multiple startups to product market fit and profitability, and spent the past few years creating products that people love at Twitter, PG Pay, and also most recently Union Finance. He also operates his own freelance practice, and most recently led the development of a DeFi protocol designed to radically transform the accessibility of lending and borrowing for those in need. Currently, he is an independent crypto and economic researcher, helping teams with experimentation and incentive design. So, yep, you guessed it. Today, they will basically talk us through on how to design incentives that are human-friendly, and also talk us through catastrophic fallout scenarios when things go wrong. So on to you. Oh, can't. I think you're on mute.
Check. Is that working?
Cool. I think you need to share your slides.
Oh, let's do that.
Perfect. Off we go.
Off we go. Hello, everyone. I'm David. Thank you, Elina, for the star-studded introduction. Excited to talk to you all today about crypto incentives or Web3 incentives. And we're going to explore that through a couple of different stories. There's a tale of the altruist and the tale of the cult builder. And we're going to start out by learning about taking a look at some non-obvious incentives that makes the whole industry go. Because how does it all work without having a notification infrastructure? How does it work without having email reminders to get people to do things? Why are people so interested? And then we're going to take a look at the tale of the altruist and building public goods. And we're going to take a look at the same use of those incentives, but this time through the lens of a cult builder and the nefarious things that can happen there. And then we're going to finish up with an experiment that hopefully there'll be a few tangible takeaways for you all. So starting with incentive market fit, there is actually some hidden, there's something that's pretty nuanced and interesting here. The core ideal of Web3 is this: you're creating public goods, you're creating public things and decentralizing them, because there's a large community of builders that believe centralized infrastructure poses a threat to the future good of humanity. Having all of the internet infrastructure controlled by centralized institutions, having social media controlled by very few actors. People believe that's set to continue or potentially impact society in a profoundly negative way. And so people are exploring a new paradigm in Web3 of community stewardship. How might we incentivize community participation and get people to maintain and help build these public goods that are at the core of our technological infrastructure? So what we see here is through this incentivization, we see autonomous systems actually becoming possible for kind of the first time in the modern technical era. And that's because people, again, are incentivized by participating. They get ownership. And, there's a couple of tongue-in-cheek jokes on this slide. But, people are, they want to, if you own a piece of something, ultimately help take care of it is the idea. But it doesn't quite always play out as intended. So we see, a really simple growth loop here. If you participate in helping build something or using something very early, you're generally rewarded with some ownership later on. And that is meant to be so that you help take care of and steward this thing and, continue to evolve it and protect it from, things. It's great. But the reality of how people use this at times is that ownership is liquidity. So ownership is usually represented in the form of a token. And that token has liquidity in the market, meaning it can be swapped for something else, namely money. And so it becomes pretty clear, like, wait a minute, by participating, I can actually just earn money, even if I don't really care that much. I don't have to care always about the actual infrastructure or the thing that's being built. All I have to do is show up. So first, we're going to take a look at an example of this going very, very right. The tale of the altruist and Uniswap. So Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, meaning that you can exchange one token for another token. In traditional finance, we represent these things as market makers, namely Jane Street and Citadel. And a lot of you, if you've ever traded or exchanged stocks, you've noticed there's a spread between the bid price and the ask price. That exists because there is, this institution or, these market makers, they hold a pool of assets that you give them something and then you get something back. And, to exchange anything, you need some of it on both sides. So you can have a pool over here to put something in, a pool over here to take something out. Now, the founders of Uniswap believe that this type of infrastructure, especially in, crypto world, is a public good and that it shouldn't be centrally controlled. And so it's like, what if we can create a decentralized version of this that is has a potential to way outperform any traditional systems. And so that's what ended up happening is, rather than having, a centralized exchange, the system allows people to, basically deposit their tokens and be available for swaps, and then by being available and helping the system go, you put you put tokens into this pool, into this pool, your tokens are basically temporarily used. You can earn a fee. And lo and behold, people liked earning fees, rather than having their money sit latent. And there's some risks with this, but we're not going to go into that right now. What's evolved is the system is just incredibly dominant over centralized institutions. So what we see today, compared to the best centralized exchanges, which are Binance and Coinbase and FTX, is that to do a swap on a $5 million swap of Ethereum to US dollars, we actually see a $25,000 savings, $25,000 of more cost efficiency on that swap, which is just wild that this decentralized system is so dominant over the best thing that decentralized systems can make. Now, over time, as the system became stable, ownership was actually given away to community, given away to people that helped build it, people that participated in different ways. And the average Uniswap, the Uniswap user that was there a long time ago was given 400 of these votes, or 400 of these tokens that govern the protocol. We see straight from the Uniswap website, it's a protocol and a public good owned and governed by Uni, is the token holders. And now this thing is pretty fully decentralized. It's not controlled by a centralized entity. There's no single person that can make changes to it. All the changes have to go through a governance process where token holders vote. And that's incredible, right? We've effectively decentralized and created a system that has huge performance advantages, which is great. That's the goal of that. That's an embodiment of the goal of Web3. But that's not quite always how it goes. And sometimes what we've seen with, the example of the Uniswap good doesn't quite, well, let's just say there's a lot of room for nefarious or bad actors. And so what happens if you make the same promises, if you ride this narrative, the Web3 narrative of decentralization and community ownership, what happens if you actually spin up memes, tell lies, and spin a web of empty promises? You're actually just building a cult. And so we're going to take a look at one of the classic examples of how that happens, using these same incentives that can be used for very good things, used for not so good things. And so you all have probably heard of meme tokens, and I've just picked this one up because, well, there's just too many easy examples. So this is Floki Eno. It's a token that someone deployed, a few people deployed, and they decided, once the meme started to catch on, to start building things around it. And this idea of participating exposes you to future ownership. Yeah, it attracts a lot of attention. And all of these things that this Floki team made with the tokenomics, the potential DeFi application, we're building a game, we're giving this token utility so you can spend it, and it's all designed to do one thing, and that's make people believe that there's another layer of future value, there's another layer of future value, there's another wave of future buyers. And so the token is the business model, rather than the public good being the thing that is represented, that the token represents ownership of. And, in a world driven by memes, it's just and then we told them the token has utility, and they kept on buying. And then, people got all excited, and there's hundreds of thousands of holders, and people pile in and recruit more and more people until inevitably we see these systems that are built in this sense collapse every time. So just please be aware that you can do this. It's not incredibly difficult to do this, but don't. So I want to jump quickly into an experiment that explores with these super powerful incentive arcs that we have, levers that we have, because they're 100 times more powerful than any Web2 referral program. how is it that you can be careful to actually get real signal from the market you're trying to serve about how useful the thing is that you're building? And we're going to take a look at like how intentionally making decisions when to grow, when to use these levers to scale your community and bring in involvement, and when maybe you want to do things in a little bit more boring way to preserve the integrity of data and observations you're able to make. And so I'm not going to go too deeply into the details of what we're actually building because it's pretty agnostic to almost any project you can work on. But we were building Union Finance, we're building a tool for developers to build more banking infrastructure. So it's essentially a thing to support the decentralization of underwriting loans and borrowing, and people being able to borrow money around the world. And so, like again, in an ecosystem that's filled with noise and speculators, well, you can easily draw on 100,000 signups, but maybe it's not always best to. And so what we decided to do, rather than spinning this web of the token having some liquidity or some value, when we started to launch, we focused entirely on security. And so having a tiered rollout, this allows us essentially to think about which incentive or which lever we're using at each time and be very careful with that. So in phase one, we basically deploy the decentralization mechanism of the protocol and say, this is actually non-transferable. You can earn it by participating. You can earn a voice and vote in the future of the protocol, but you actually can't transfer this thing. So there's no liquidity. Like if you're gaining it because you actually want to have a voice and participate in the thing. And that allowed us to spend more time focusing on launch security and live testing, which was great. And then we were able to think about, well, maybe let's onboard some people that we know are altruists and some curious developers from other projects. And what we actually found out through that onboarding process is we shouldn't move on to phase 4 yet because we'd invalidated a couple of our key hypotheses around capital demand. And so it really did save us at one point by having this tiered rollout system from essentially driving off of a cliff with protocol development. And we got to make huge corrections, make very, very significant course changes. And then in the future, we'll revisit using these really powerful levers. So really, really glad that we ended up doing that. And what I really hope people take from all of this is that success in Web3 is about creating lasting impact through sustainable decentralized protocols or public goods. And communities are a lot better at getting started doing this than cults are. And so it's like, please don't build useless things because you can actually make a lot of money doing that, even if you just can. There's enough speculative capital still flowing through the space where that's kind of always a risk. And then the second thing is you be really, really careful not to game your own metrics because the incentives at play are 100 times more powerful than we've really ever had access to before. And so, sometimes there are times to use these levers and use them well, but use them wisely, use them ethically, and please use them with care. So I'll wrap up there and say thanks for listening. I'm David PCO on Twitter. Please do reach out with any questions, comments. Yeah, there's my stuff. So thank you all. Hope to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, David. I really liked your tiered rollout approach, especially not trying to game your metrics and see actually the impact it can have.
Thank you.
Makes a lot of sense.
Cheers.
Yeah, cool. I will just add back in Mark and Nayat, and we'll do a couple of questions. So my first question is, obviously, crypto has been around for a while. Out of everything that Web3 has to offer, so it's more accessible. But for the rest, for everything that is still emerging within Web3, what is is there a target persona, or are there some trends of people who are early adopters of Web3? I'm just very curious. Who are people that use Web3?
I think that there is right now a bigger spectrum. So you have like the native users, like the, let's say, early adopters, which normally like are quite tech savvy people. And this type of people, the vast majority of them, they use things like Curve, for example. They don't mind using that type of platform, right? That is like quite complex to use, because the benefit is higher than the complexity of trying to figure out, like how it works. Then it really depends on the type of Web3 product. For example, when there is, there's a platform that I really liked called Sound XYZ, and it's basically an NFT platform for music. And you can basically just buy music from artists, like from Snoop Dogg to like very emerging artists. So, and that, I guess that it taps into another type of users that might not be interested in DeFi, but they are interested in music NFTs. And then you just have, like, I guess that different type of products tap into different type of personas.
Anything to add, David, Mark?
Sure, I can add. So yeah, if you go, I agree with what Nayat said, right? So like if you go back to the roots, peer-to-peer payment, peer-to-peer transaction is at the heart of blockchain. So like cross-border payments and finding solutions for people who may not be ready, where bank isn't really readily available, is actually a use case that isn't as big compared to others, but it's still being used. So I see a lot of like nonprofits and groups who are doing that, distributing payments. And then the other one is the artist, right? So like generating new revenue streams and combining that with like how do you connect with your biggest fans is what we're seeing more recently. So I agree with that.
Yeah, something that I think that it's very valuable, and that a lot of people that think about Web3 and crypto, they just think that it's just investing and basically just gambling. But it has really good use cases, and the most obvious one is stable coins. So stable coins are basically crypto, but which value is pegged with, for example, the dollar. So one USDZ is $1 always. And these digital dollars are very useful for people from countries which own currency is very devalued because of inflation. So people from Argentina, people from Venezuela, people from Lebanon, they are benefiting from this because they can save their money in dollars. In Argentina, for example, they only have access to buy in dollars like $200 per month. So they are really not able to save themselves from inflation. And thanks to digital dollars, they can save themselves and, like really make sure that their life savings are secure and that they're not going to lose 90% of it because their government is useless. So this is very, very like quite useful. And I think that it's really changing, or at least like saving the economical life of a lot of people in South America, for instance, which there is a huge use of stable coins.
I guess it goes back to what you were saying regarding not hiding the complexity and communicating the value, because I had no idea about this at all, and I'm sure like plenty of people don't. I also wanted to ask, what are some of the ways that you think you can create a sense of belonging in a community? I know that's something that Mark mentioned, but how do you create that sense of belonging?
I'll jump in here. I think the most I mean, there's a couple sides to it. There's a few different elements. One is like the emotional side of like, yes, I feel comfortable and I feel welcome here. And so instilling that in your communities is like always really, really important if you want them to be non-toxic. But I think there's also something that's really important about creating opportunities for people to add value and then recognizing that. And so it speaks to like our deeper, part of our deeper yearning for purpose or for being a part of things. So it's like being able to see like, oh yes, I had a small impact. I was able to help here. I was able to, do something like that.
Cool, that makes sense. Mark, anything you want to add on to this one?
Yeah, I think that's very well said. So like just listening to people who are asking questions and sharing their thoughts and responding to it proactively creates a sense of belonging.
Oh, like when you think about incentives, like from your presentations, it seemed like the main incentive really is ownership. Is there anything else that works as a good incentive for those most skilled contributors, or is it purely financial gains?
I think it depends on the group, right? Like just similar, like translating that into product, like different products, like depending on what value prop you're offering, and amplifying that is what you should be doing. So, for example, in DAO Masters, one of the groups that I'm part of, review to tool, like DAO tooling reviews and insight is one of the things that we're sharing with the members. So the value prop for that group is to learn about these tools, share your thoughts, and then give us some suggestions, right? And then the onboarding education one, the value prop there.
Oh no, we lost Mark. No, right in the middle of it as well.
Yes. I'm so sorry, Elina. It was first me, then Mark. I guess that it's not the day.
Great time. No, Mark is back.
Yeah. Anyway, I just finished that by saying that it depends on the product, and I think the value prop is playing to your strength, and then using that as an incentive for people to either participate and then give back. So it's the ownership is the foundation, and then as to how to use the ownership is the output.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. We also have a question. Are there any thought leaders and or resources in the space that are worth learning from?
Yeah,
you all should go follow Mark. Mark is great, and
great. David too. Yes, there is. I mean, I don't know if you are on Twitter, Surajan, and I really hope I pronounced your name well. But to me, Twitter is like the best place to actually, find resources and get up to date with like the products that I use, or even like get to know about like new things that are going on. So definitely Twitter is to me like a good place to go to be in touch with like Web3 communities. There is also Discord, of course, but I would say that Discord can get a bit like a bit wild. There is too many things going on there, so yeah, if it's like to follow certain people or certain projects, I will go to Twitter.
I do suggest Twitter is definitely the go-to, although it's crossing LinkedIn, it's crossing the chasm, so it's now on more and more LinkedIn. I do suggest it's very noisy, so like focus on maybe starting with the groups. So for example, pick the vertical, whether it's DeFi, DAO, or something else, and then find publications around it. If you don't have any idea, maybe you can start with where the capital is. So A16, Delphi, Digital, Misari are groups that do publications. And if you like someone there, follow the person directly on LinkedIn or Twitter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And final question from me. So when you guys got into Web3 and made this switch from Web2, how did you find the transition? And what were the kind of the biggest challenges that you saw, and how did you solve them? So if you're a product person that's currently in Web2 and you want to move to Web3, what would be the best advice you would give them, basically?
To me personally, the best thing I could do to be able to understand better the space and to be able to understand the products that I was designing for, it was basically be an actual user of these products. So I think that to just understand what is Web3, like, use your first decentralized wallet. Deposit some money on Aave or Compound. Like, try to see how, like how it works. Go to Sound XYZ and buy some NFT music. Get involved in some groups, as Mark said. Like, I don't know, get on Discord. Be involved in something.
And this is, I think, to me, the best way to really learn and to understand this space.
What about you, Mark? You basically switched to Web3 quite recently. How has that been?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just need to dive in, like use the tools, and then also be part of the groups. Like that's the thing, right? Like the beauty of being in crypto is you can use Discord. Like as much as some people don't like it, you have to be there to at least get a sense of how things are working. So like a lot of things are gated, but a lot of communities are open. So you just need to go in there. You can see the roadmap, the charter, and how people work. It's actually very interesting how openly people are discussing things, which is not something that you can do in a startup. So I'd say go in there, reach out to folks, and have those discussion, and then being involved in events like this for sure.
Yeah, there is
I would
definitely
add,
meetups and all that.
Yeah, that's absolutely. I think the only thing I would add is just try and have a narrow focus on one vertical. If you try and learn about everything, it's just way too much. Your head will be spinning for about 3 years. But if you stay focused on one thing, you can ramp up in probably 6-ish months, which is pretty great.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you to the speakers, and thank you to the people who tuned in tonight to listen to us. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, everyone.